In the personal story segment tonight, as the Democrats love to remind you, the FBI has confirmed it's looking into possible improper links between the Russian government and the Trump campaign. One name that's emerged as part of the investigation, Carter Page. He worked as an unpaid informal foreign policy advisor to the Trump campaign for less than a year. According to the report by the Washington Post, confirmed in part by Fox News' Catherine Herridge, last summer, a secret court gave the FBI permission to spy on Page, an American citizen. Page previously worked as an investment banker in Moscow. He joins us now. Carter, thank you for joining us. Let's get this out right out front. Why did you go to Moscow?
I was invited to give the graduation speech at New Economics School. And I've spoken at universities in Moscow for many, many years. Most of the top universities in Moscow I've spoken with at on many occasions.
So when you were there, were you representing the Trump administration
as well? No, and I made that absolutely clear in every statement.
It did overlap with your tenure with the Trump organization, or with the campaign, yeah?
Yeah, but this was, you talk about fake narratives. That was really something that was completely
So you go over there,
yeah.
You make some speeches as a professor, yeah?
Yes.
And you end up meeting some of these Russian people, operatives, yeah?
Listen, I
Kislyak?
was with Kislyak. I said hello to briefly in Cleveland, so that was nothing.
So everything over in Russia was incidental?
Less than incidental.
Okay. What about this banker, the Russian banker that you knew here in New York?
I didn't actually know him. There was this case against a few operatives that were here, and I happen to know one of the diplomats that was based here. And I deal with diplomats all the time at the UN, et cetera. So just brief
expand on that a little bit. So the Russian diplomats you bump into in what capacity?
So in this example, one of my business partners from Asia was speaking at Asia Society on Park Avenue. I happened to say hello to him, and we struck up a little dialogue, and I met him once for coffee, offered him some ideas. That was about it. Yeah.
What time frame is this?
This was 2013.
Oh, it was 2013.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's fast forward to when the Trump administration became relevant. Was there any meetings with any of the Russians?
Listen, there's always, for example, like with Ambassador Kislyak, I may have said hello to a few people at times, but nothing, certainly never any negotiations.
No discussion of sanctions, lifting sanctions, easing sanctions?
Never.
None of that discussion?
Yeah.
All right, let me talk. Why do you think you were unmasked? First of all, why were you surveilled, and why were you unmasked?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, this big Washington Post report this week, I mean, it goes back to just creating a false narrative. And I was laughing when Nancy Soderberg was just saying to you that, well, the president needs to get in touch with reality. Well, the reality which the last administration created was just such a complete disaster that they needed to kind of find some new possibility.
Did Susan Rice, who do you think went to the FISA court to get permission to surveil you?
I have learned with all the false accusations that have come out against me that I'm not going to speculate. Again, I'm very encouraged by all this new information that's coming out about some of these unethical practices and potentially illegal practices.
Like?
Well, such as false evidence. Director Comey, on his March 20th testimony, said politicians lie all the time, or not in so many words, but people can lie to the media and there's no law against that. However, when you introduce false evidence in a court of law, including the FISA court, that is illegal. So let's see what happens. I don't know. Do you think
there was some false evidence about you introduced to the FISA court to obtain that warrant so they could surveil you?
Well, there's certainly a lot of indication. So, for example, Harry Reid's letter last August, citing this dodgy dossier, which eventually would come out in January, saying that I met all these sanctioned officials, et cetera, which was completely false, based on a private investigator that people associated with the Clinton campaign hired.
Did you work with Mike Flynn?
I never met him, never had the opportunity.
Why do you think your name was unmasked by Susan Rice? I assume it's Susan Rice that unmasked your name.
I'm not going to jump to any conclusions. I'm very encouraged that all of the lies that have been a drag on this administration are finally coming out into the open. Let's see what happens. You know, so many people have lied against me from the Clinton campaign, many of their surrogates, many of the think tanks that have supported them, Brookings Institution, Center for American Progress, et cetera. Let's see what actually comes out. But I'm not going to speculate.
So we heard about Mike Flynn being unmasked. We heard about Carter Page being unmasked. Are there more names to follow?
We shall see. You know, I'm not going to. I deal in facts, and so I'm not concerned. And we'll cross that bridge.
Why did Susan Rice get involved in this? For what reason? Was it national security interests?
I wrote my Trident Scholar project at the Naval Academy, doing research on using information as a political weapon, that both in the executive branch and legislative branch of government, this was information as a political weapon.
Carter Page, thank you very much.
Thank you, Eric.